counseling here at St. Joe's. And I'm really happy to be here to kind of introduce you to our panelists. All of them are fantastic in so many ways. I knew three of them before, and I got to know the last person just this past month. So it's really great to have them here talking about what I believe are really important topics in college admission. And it's a profession. It's a process that changes almost every year, right? So let me just introduce the panel, and then how we're going to do this tonight is they each have 2 topics to talk about. And I'm going to have them talk for about 3 to 5 minutes, each one about one topic. I will open it up for questions about those topics for, 10 or 15 minutes. And then we'll go to round 2 of topics. And then we'll do questions after that. So we'll try to break it up a little. First is Mike DiPiazza. He's Director of Admission and Recruitment at Assumption University. Yeah? Almost Assumption University. Assumption College in Worcester, Mass. And Carissa Peckham is Associate Vice President of Enrollment Management at Central Connecticut State University. And Corey Eunice is Vice President of Enrollment Management at Fairfield University. And Julia McClario is Senior Associate Director of Admission at Trinity College in Hartford. So we're really happy to have them here tonight. And I will let Mike lead off. Okay, and can we talk about, let's talk about the value of liberal arts education. So tell a little bit about you before you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me here tonight, all of us. Great opportunity for all of you to learn a little bit about the college admission process and what to expect over the course of the next year or 2 years. Just to give us a sense, how many of you are a junior, a parent of a junior, or a current junior now? So, just about everybody. And easy to assume everybody else is a sophomore? Some freshmen, okay. All right, good. So, for the majority of you, this is a process that really you're just kind of getting started with now, hopefully, if not started probably in the summertime. But give you a sense of a little bit of my background. Like you, I went through Catholic education my entire life, from preschool right through my MBA. Worked at 4 Catholic colleges, so not only am I a proponent of Catholic education, but also a proponent of the liberal arts. And so for me, what I'm going to talk about here a little bit is something that I've lived both personally and professionally. So I think that gives you a little bit of a sense. Just before I start that, though, a little bit more background. I worked at Iona College, St. John's University, and then, of course, now at Assumption College. We are going to be a university starting in the summertime. We'll transition to a university. So one of the nice pieces there is that the college is no longer has the academic programs falling under one umbrella, but rather it's been broken up into 5 different schools. But we're not here to talk about just Assumption. I give a talk similar to this topic every year at a program that we do called Discovery Day. And for us, it's very relevant at Assumption because the liberal arts is the core of who we are. Even with the transition to university, it has been made very apparent by our president, by our provost, and really by our faculty that remaining true to our liberal arts is a key component of what the education would be. When I think of the liberal arts, I don't think of a program where students are going to go do 4 years of English and then not be able to find some sort of employment or the ability to go to grad school. I think really the exact opposite. I think that when you do receive a liberal arts education, that a couple of things happen. One, you're going to go to a school where you're probably going to do anywhere from, say, 36 to 45 credits, give or take, in a core curriculum. So your English, your math, your science, your history, maybe a foreign language, the social sciences such as psychology, sociology, economics. And you're really going to be expected to complete all of that prior prior to really declaring a major, okay? At Assumption and at some of the previous institutions that I worked at, you didn't have to declare a major until the end of your sophomore year. You were certainly able to, and you were able to get on that track, but the expectation or the leeway, so to speak, was that you were going to be able to get a taste of everything before having to officially declare a major, so that you knew you were comfortable in the chosen profession or the chosen field that you were considering. So that's kind of one. Two, you're going to have the ability to think critically, communicate effectively, and solve complex problems. That's really the hallmark of the liberal arts, is those three components. They're not just teaching you skills for a particular profession, but we're aiming to teach you the ability to do all of that, so that when you go into a job that isn't necessarily what you were trained for, you have the resources necessary to figure out what the issue or the challenge is at hand. Okay, and just to kind of back up a little bit of that, when I give this speech, I kind of talk about two main things. One is, you go home now and you can search or Google the liberal arts, and you're going to find stories and articles and trends about what the liberal arts are and how they're relevant in society today. But a couple of things to keep in mind. A recent study by the Association of American Colleges and Universities found that 93% of employers agreed that the skills of the liberal arts graduates and a new hire are actually more attractive than an actual undergraduate degree. Okay, so you have that, they have that working for them. Okay, and then just to back that up even further, Forbes magazine did a study recently, and they looked into the database of over 182 million job postings to get a sense of the characteristics that each company desired. They then tested those theories on programs that were notorious for not being employable, liberal arts, history, and English. And what they found was that the career options available to general liberal arts degrees are far more diverse and attractive than are usually assumed. So students that receive a liberal arts education are not just prepared for the chosen major, but are given the opportunity and the skills necessary to compete for jobs, but also that ability to think outside the box.
Thank you. And the complete opposite, I believe, would be what Carissa will talk about, and that's the value of a public education.
So hi everyone, my name is Carissa Peckham, and I'm the AVP for Enrollment Management at Central Connecticut State University. I've been in higher ed for about 12, 13 years, but at Central Connecticut State University for about a year. Actually, yesterday was my 1-year anniversary there. So before I get to my topic, the value of public education, I actually do want to comment on what Mike said. I myself was an English major, and then used that to get myself into law school. A lot of folks are looking at law school and think they have to go pre-law when they're an undergraduate, but I think there are a broad range of different majors you can go into, and liberal arts certainly supports that kind of career track. And here I am in higher education, having been in higher education for a long time, so that certainly supports the idea that a liberal arts education can take you in many different directions and support a lot of different careers. As far as the value of public education, I think that the most obvious thing that I can say is that public education is affordable. If you look at the tuition and fee rates for the public institutions in the state of Connecticut, whether you're looking at UConn, Central, Southern, Eastern, or Western, you'll find that those tuition and fee rates are substantially lower than most private institutions. The regional state institutions run about $11,000, $12,000 per year, that's tuition and fees combined, and about $12,000 per year for room and board. When you factor on top of that any merit-based aid that you might qualify for, honors scholarships based on GPA and SAT scores, need-based scholarships based on completion of the federal financial aid application, that can be substantially lower than that. For some students who qualify for a lot of aid, it could be nothing. So I think that the affordability of a public education is certainly something that's attractive to students. And if you were to look at payscale.com or look at the college scorecard, you'll find that the average starting salary or the average median salary for students coming out of these public institutions is on par with the average starting salaries and median salaries of students coming out of many of the privates. And so you can end up paying less to go to school, but still ending up with the same career outcomes. I think that's a really important point to make about public institutions. But on top of that, I think there might be a misconception that if you're a large public institution like CCSU, which has the second largest undergraduate enrollment in the state, that might mean you're in large crowded classrooms or you're being taught by a teacher's assistant or a graduate assistant, but that's not true. CCSU is not a research institution like many public institutions. We're a teaching institution, and that means that our student to faculty ratio is only 15 to 1, that our classes are all taught by full-time faculty or adjunct professors in some small instances, but that our class sizes are small and students really do have an opportunity to connect with faculty. In addition, because we're supported by the state, because the state wants to provide residents of Connecticut with an affordable, valuable education, they support us with funds that allow us to charge a low tuition rate, but also with funds that allow us to expand our facilities. So for example, at CCSU, we're building a brand new engineering building. We just broke ground on it a few months ago, and that will allow us to support the engineering programs that we currently have, but will also allow us to support engineering programs that are new and we're exploring in the future. And then finally, I'll say that as a large public institution, and this you would find the same thing at UConn or the same thing at Southern, we're serving a lot of Connecticut residents. We're graduating a lot of Connecticut residents who stay in the state. CCSU has 70,000 active alumni working in the state, and they provide a lot of networking, internship, and career opportunities to our graduates. So I think for a student who's looking for an affordable education that still provides you with the same opportunities, a public education is something you should certainly consider.
Thank you. And one of the, I think, the fastest growing topics in college admission is demonstrated interest. We've talked a little bit about that to a lot of our juniors, certainly our seniors. So Corey's going to just talk about that.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks for having me. As Tim said, I'm Corey Eunice from Fairfield University, dad of 3 kids who will most likely be St. Joe's alums someday. They're still a little young. We live over in Monroe, so not too far from here, so it's great to be with you tonight. So demonstrated interest is a really hot topic, and it's an important topic, but it's one that's really sometimes misunderstood by parents, by students, and what's the appropriate way of telling a school that you really have an interest in them, and they want, how do I make my application really stand out to that admissions officer who's doing the first read on my application or that admission committee. And so, as you're going through this process, and as it's junior year, and you're starting to create a list of schools, this isn't the time to really be overly concerned with demonstrated interest. What you should be doing right now is thinking, what schools fit me, what types of places do I want, all of the great things that you're working on. When it comes to the role of demonstrated interest, as you're going into this summer and you're starting to really cull down that list, and you have a list of 2, 3, 4 schools that you really have an interest in, the number one way to demonstrate your interest in that school is to do an official visit. And so registering with the admission office, checking in with the admission office, and having a visit where you either attend a tour, do an information session, and if the schools that you're looking at provide evaluative admission interviews, that is another really big way to demonstrate your interest in the school. Schools, just like any, colleges, universities, just like any kind of corporation, we are data junkies. We track just about everything. So when students contact the office, when they're opening emails, when they're doing X, Y, and Z, just the way that Amazon or any other place tailors things to your needs. We want, when you come onto our website, to our portal, we want to make sure that you don't have to enter your information 7 different times. So we do track these things. But for us, and for what a lot of schools will really look at is this student, have they been engaged with us through the admission process? Did they come for a visit? Did they interview? when the admission rep was at their high school, did they come down to that high school visit? Now, there's always going to be a day where your number one school is here, but it's your AP Calc test day, and you can't make it. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to set your application on fire. But finding some sort of contact within that admission office is usually sometimes can be helpful. So we encourage you, and a lot of schools on their admission website will put down the admission rep who represents a specific region or territory or part of the alphabet. And you can find that information, and you can just send an email about yourself. You don't have to email that admission rep every day. You don't have to email them every month, but maybe once or twice in that cycle, just to show your interest is a really great way of being able for you to demonstrate your interest to the school. About a year ago, there was an article, I think in the Washington Post, about, and I'll leave the school out, but there was parents of students who were trying to get their kids into a selective school in the South. And they were so concerned about open rates on emails that when the son was on a spring break trip, that the mom was logging into the kid's emails so that every time X university emailed them, that they would open the email so that the school would see that they're interested. That's way too far. 99.9% of the schools that you're going to be looking at and applying to don't require that. The real crux of the matter is try to visit. If it's a school that's too far away for you to visit, you need to wait until you have an offer of admission. Schools will understand that, but that's where a nice email will come in, or a tailored essay to your specific school in the Common App can go a long way. The one thing I'll say about the tailored essays is a lot of students think that, they write, I've always wanted, since, little kid, I've always wanted to go to your school. When you're applying with the Common App, make sure that it's the right school's name in there. We can't tell you how many times, dear Georgetown, I've wanted to be a Hoya since birth, and I think, well, wrong school. It goes into a different pile. But make sure that you reach out to us, connect with us. People get into admission work because they love working with students. They like finding the students that are going to be the right fit, who are going to do great things in their community. And so it gets us from stopping to having to read. It gets us from stopping to have to do kind of the work that's not as fun. So communicate with us. We love to share our stories and to make a connection with you.
Great, thank you, Corey. And the last topic of round one is the essay, and that's hot on my list because I believe it's really important. And our English department, as you all know, believes it's very important. So we are talking constantly about the essay, and I'm thrilled to have an expert to kind of offer her thoughts on the college essay.
Thanks, Tim. So hello, everyone. My name is Julia. I work at Trinity College in Hartford. I'm a graduate of Trinity, and just another plug for the liberal arts. It kind of relates to what I'm talking to is I actually, when I graduated from Trinity, I worked in corporate communications and copy editing and marketing and rebranding, and then decided to totally pivot and work in higher ed for the past 7 years. So the fact that you can make those pivots, another shameless plug for the liberal arts here. So like Tim said, I'm here to talk to you about the essay. This is my favorite part of the application that I read each year. I will read probably about 1,000 applications this year, but some essays have stuck with me for years and years. One of the biggest things for you to remember is that so much of your college application, is other people speaking on your behalf. It's your counselor letter, it's those teacher recommendations. Your essay is the place where you get to speak for yourself and get to tell us a little bit more about you, maybe something that we wouldn't otherwise know about your essay, about your life. But what I want to recognize too is that it's really weird to talk about yourself, particularly if you've been in an educational environment where you've been taught to write those 5-paragraph essays or avoid using I statements. It's a really big jump to be able to write a personal statement that shows something about yourself, and it can feel really awkward. So what I encourage you to think about is, what is something that's not in your college application, in your activities, and that little area you get to talk about that activity, or in your teacher rec, or on your transcript, that's really important for a college to know about you. If you're writing about something that means something to you, it's going to make your life a little bit easier. I think there's a lot of pressure of, I have to write an essay that's gonna knock an admissions committee's socks off and they're gonna talk about it for years and years. The likelihood is that you're not, and that's okay, because I read 1,000 applications and that's a light reading rate for my office. And again, that's okay. The most important thing is for that it to be authentic and true to you. I think too, there's often a lot of fear around trying to be funny. If you are funny, you should be funny, but if you're not funny, don't be funny. Because it's not gonna be authentic. So I think that that's my key here, is that you wanna be true to yourself. And going back to my point that sometimes it's really hard to talk about yourself, I'm gonna encourage you to do a really awkward exercise with yourself if you feel like you're struggling, is either record yourself talking on your phone or talk out loud about your college essay topic and have somebody write it out for you. Because you would be amazed at how beautiful and lyrical your thoughts are about your topic, and then if you try and write them in a quiet room by yourself, it comes out clunky or awkward. So it can be a really helpful exercise for you to listen to your voice and how you talk about your topic. Again, awkward, but worth the exercise. The other thing too is that I think sometimes students get very caught up in the narrative and the details of the story and then forget that stories need to have a thesis or an argument. So I encourage students that I work with to see if they can write a 5 to 8 word sentence that they can put at the top of the page that tells someone what the point of their essay is. You're going to delete it before you hit submit, but having that thesis statement at the top as a point of reference for yourself as you're going through and writing can be really helpful, because did that detail, did that sentence, did that paragraph go back to that thesis statement? And if it doesn't, then maybe it doesn't need to be there. Last couple things, have it proofread by lots of people. So certainly your teachers and your counselors, but maybe a friend or two. Maybe you can get together a group of your friends to swap essays. I think that can be helpful. But also too, to point back to this idea of demonstrated interest too, all of our topics are very related here, is that many colleges that you apply to are going to offer you optional supplemental essays. Those are really important too. And if a college gives you the option to write an essay, you should do it. I know it's annoying that we say it's optional, but it's another great way for you to tell a college, hey, I'm willing to spend the time and write something that's just for you, and goes back often into that demonstrated interest piece.
Great, thank you so much. And I did promise our panel, because the emails were flying about who's going to get what topic, I did promise them that they could add another kind of rebuttal for a minute or so about a topic that they didn't present on. So, any interest? No? All right, I guess I was wrong. So let's just open it up now to questions about the topics. The value of a liberal arts education from Mike, and Carissa talked about the value of a public school education in Connecticut. Corey had demonstrated interest, and Julia had the essay. So are there any questions out there? Well, here we go. Okay.
On the essay, when should you start thinking of the topic, and when should you really have it start being looked at by teachers, parents?
Sure. Can everybody hear me if I just talk? Yes, awesome. I was a tour guide for a very long time, so I'm used to projecting my voice. So the question was about timing on the essay. I think that the summer before your senior year is a really good time to start thinking about it. Think about, like, what are the things that you've experienced already in high school that are really important to you, and just start noodling around with it a little bit. Play around with it. Sometimes try 2 or 3 different topics and see what sticks. What I always did is I made my parents my first guinea pigs and was like, which one of these do you think is the most impactful? Obviously your parents are a little biased, and that's okay, you're supposed to be. But I think that can be a really good exercise. I feel like there's no specific time to bring it to teachers. I think that it's more of a comfort level, or when you feel really stuck. If you're hitting a wall and saying this isn't hitting, this isn't good, then bring it in. But I definitely for some students, and that's totally normal and could totally change the topic, but that's what your teachers kind of expect in that process.
Yes.
Are there any essay topics that just make you grow? Like you're like, not this topic again. Like I can't read another essay about a mission trip or.
I have to say,
Yeah.
the big game essay, that I can already see it. It was a rainy night, and we left as we started as friends, and we left as brothers, and all. But Les is the most authentic story about your ability. That one is you can write about athletics, but the big game essay I think we've all read 7,000 times. Yeah.
Right, and I think it goes back to your authenticity point. If that's really the most impactful thing that has happened in your entire life, then you should write about it. But I'm imagining that you've had a lot of other impactful moments in your life. So I wouldn't say there's a specific topic. The thing that kills me is trying to be funny when you're not funny, because it makes me cringe, and it's okay. And then I think just a poorly proofread essay is frustrating, because you do have a lot of time to do this. It's gonna feel crazy, but the Common App goes live on August 1st, and most of our institutions don't have regular decision deadlines until January, maybe even February. So you have a lot of time to play around with things, so that is like a huge thing for me.
How about the John F. Kennedy quote? How many times have you seen that?
I don't get that one that
Oh
much.
God, I got that for so many years. Questions? Go ahead.
So, demonstrated interest. I mean, so you've gone to visit the school, it's one of your top whatever, but, you know, the financial situation is you couldn't do early action, right? So you have to do regular decision. So, should you establish a relationship via email with those schools? While they're, I mean, you've gone to visit, they have all your information, now you're just waiting.
Sure. So
Like, you don't want to seem too pushy, and you didn't say early action, so.
Do you want this one?
yeah. So the question is about demonstrated interest and decision plans between early decision, which is the binding agreement, and regular decision. And for most places, it's really the fact that you've had some sort of outreach or connection. It doesn't, the decision plan, now, let me back up. If you're applying to Fairfield early decision and you've never visited, I'm going to take a real wonder as to what's that connection between the school, and if it's a borderline candidate, it's really going to make me wonder. But for students, depending upon their decision plan, the fact is if they've had either a contact, some sort of communication, some sort of visit, that's really enough. And so let me give you an example of how demonstrated interest is used. And I'll speak mostly for Fairfield. I know it may be different at some of my colleagues' places. So for students that, this year we'll have just under 13,000 applications. And we have to narrow down that field, and whether it be early action, regular decision. When it comes to students who we are really struggling with at the admission committee level of, hey, we have X number of spots that we can offer of admission at early action or regular decision. How do we know of these students that are really capable, which ones have a real interest, and if they're admitted would likely come? And so from my standpoint, my board is telling me we have to continuously improve the academic profile, reduce the number of students that you're admitting, all these things that go in contrast to some of the other goals. And so as an admission guy, you want to admit as many students as you can, because we get into this business to find good connections. However, at the end of the day, if there's two students who have identical profiles, and one visited and one didn't, and I have one spot left, typically that would go to the student who had visited or had some sort of communication with our office. So I hope that kind of, for a lot of times, it won't be the make or break, and it rarely ever comes down to there's 2 applicants for 1 spot left, but in theory, in practice, we want to just see that the student's engaged. If you are going regular decision and you don't want to go early decision, just the fact that you visited, the fact that you did an interview or had an email with the admission officer is sufficient for that interest.
Anything else want to add to that?
All right, we got on this side of the room. Questions? Yes, back here, student, all right. I'll give you the mic, how's that?
This is for demonstrating interest. What can we do to show our interest other than visiting the campus, sending an email, and applying?
Or you don't want to answer that, do you?
No, it's a good question. You know, I think engaging somehow with members of the community, you know, especially if I think about students from St. Joe's High School, you know, you're so close by that you may have not done an official admission visit because you have 3, 4, 5, 6 different friends that are here, and maybe you sat in on a class or you came over to a basketball game. In order for it to kind of, to quote unquote count, it has to go, you have to somehow make some sort of connection to an admissions officer or somebody in the office. If it's just, I know Professor so-and-so and I went to his or her class, if that doesn't come back to us, we have no way of knowing. If you, because let's say you have, you know, a friend here whose mom or dad works at Fairfield and you came in and you had a visit with them, just let us know. That's all you have to do. And so other ways to demonstrate the interest, you know, it's something that has to be recorded within the office. If we don't know about it, it will never, you know, come up on your record.
I'll just add that a lot of our students are looking at schools in the South, and if you don't connect with that admission counselor, who sometimes lives in Connecticut, by the way, if you don't connect with that admissions counselor, then that's a major red flag, I would think, in terms of, does the student really want to get on a plane for 3 hours and head south to a college? So we've talked a lot about that within our offices. Reach out to that admissions person if you're looking at a lot of those schools in the South that everyone's looking at. Questions?
Yeah, so my question was more on the essay. Everything else about college feels like there is some, you can visit a college by this date, you can file a college application by this date. It's like kind of a bound thing that you can do. Essay is very open. How do you stimulate and motivate a kid? Because that's kind of there.
I don't know, maybe other parents in the room have more advice than I would on that. I think that start early is a big one, but also maybe and I don't know, I'm not a parent, right? So I'm gonna, just from what I've seen in interaction with students, with their parents, and with me, one thing that I've noticed is that essays that I really love are often about very small moments in a student's life that maybe would look inconsequential to someone nearby, but really had a large impact. So an example I often use is, I had a student a few years ago, she wrote an essay about all the amazing things that happened in her family around the dining room table. And it described the table to me, and talked about all the life events, and I read this 3 years ago and I still talk about this essay. So why I mention this is that I think that it's part of an ongoing dialogue, in that if something really, if you witness your child doing something awesome or having an amazing reaction to something or feeling proud about something, just taking that step and saying, hey, this is something that you should be proud of. Maybe this is something you want to try and write a few sentences about and what it means to you. I don't know if other people on the panel have some thoughts on motivating high schoolers.
They all have young kids.
They're challenging enough.
Yeah.
Any questions in the back? Way in the back.
What are you going to comment on the pros and cons of early action, regular decision, regular,
Pros and cons for early action, early decision versus regular decision.
Sure, I mean, I'm happy to talk about, so Trinity is only an early decision school, it's not early action. Early decision is binding, you wanna marry us, you know that, and also too, we know that you're coming if you're admitted. So the number one benefit is that our admit rate is much higher in early decision because we know you are going to come. And to what Corey was saying, like, we're data junkies, we're looking to maximize taking as many students who we know are going to come, and so that's the easiest, most obvious benefit to early decision. It's really nice to know by mid-December where you're going to college too. But for us, we will take more than half of our class in very seriously. You have to sign an early decision agreement, you, the student, the parent, and the college counselor, and we take that very seriously, and it's a binding agreement you're making with the college, so that's a long-term conversation to have with your family if that's the right choice for the family. And I know a parent was asking about financial aid. If finances are going to be a huge concern for your family in that decision-making process, then I would encourage you to think about maybe going the early action or early decision route. But also use, there's something on every college's website called the net price calculator, and it is not easy, but it's 15 to 20 minutes of your time. You put in some basic finance information. It'll give you a rough estimate of what your financial aid package might look like from the college, or what your EFC might be, which is your estimated family contribution. So that can help you in that early decision-making process too.
I'll just add to that question back here. I guess maybe Mike could potentially answer this. Is I feel that a lot of our students, particularly for nursing, a lot of our students are applying early action because they feel that that's their best chance of getting a nursing spot or a physical therapy spot. So, and as I talk to our admissions professionals across the country, I'm hearing things like 40% of our class comes in early action, 50% comes in early decision. If there's 100 nursing spots, then 60 of them come through early action. So I'll let Mike handle that.
So that assumption for early action, which is the non-binding version essentially of early decision, we're going to see probably 55 to 60% of our applications come in early action. For me, or for us, one of the big benefits is those students are going to apply. They're going to apply early, and they're going to receive a decision early. And then on top of that, they're going to receive a financial aid package that much earlier than the rest of our student body. So to kind of give you that timeline, November 1 deadline, December 15th application or decision release, early January, provided your FAFSA is in and complete, you're going to have a financial aid package from us. So you're going to have about 4 months or so to really make a decision on whether or not assumption is a fit for you, and not speaking directly for all of them, but among our competitors, I know they're on a similar timeline. So that's part of it. In terms of a program like nursing where there is a limited number of spots, we would always encourage a student to apply early for that, because at least at this point in time, from assumptions perspective, we don't have one deadline for a program like that. There's still 3 deadlines for our nursing program, but many schools do only have one deadline, and it would typically be a little bit earlier because of the limited number of seats that are available in the program. So you want to be prepared, you want to be looking into that, you want to be paying attention to when those deadlines are, because there is going to be some differences among each of the schools.
Anyone else comment on that? Questions? Right here.
You know, if you apply to nursing and you don't get a seat in nursing, can you get into the university? Or is that college dependent?
That's college dependent.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. At Assumption, yes, but that's college dependent.
Okay, so they'll accept you into the university with like a wait list or whatever.
Provided you meet the general admission criteria.
Question here.
So to be clear then, if you apply to nursing and you don't get early admission to nursing, you're not, but you get accepted by the college, you're not bound to the college, you still can go to the college non-nursing. Or is it one of those you accepted only to nursing or you denied to nursing? That's, because nursing is so competitive.
Every school is going to be completely different. So at Fairfield, it's an up or down on nursing. It's not, you may make the admission requirement for one of the other colleges or schools, but we don't admit you to that. You are admitted into the Egan School of Nursing, either a yes or a no, or potentially a defer, which means you are an early action candidate, but we need more time and we'll review you for the regular decision pool.
Great. We have a lot of students that are interested in nursing. I think I'm the reason why it all shifted towards a nursing discussion right now. So we're trying to keep it general topics. We have a whole nother 4 topics to go through, but we have one more question here.
So you have, so sometimes some schools you can do early action because they allow, in other schools it has to be regular decision.
theory, every student should have until May 1, unless they're early decision, which is a binding agreement which has different deadlines. So if you are an early action or a regular decision student, you typically have until May 1st to make your decision. Historically, schools were encouraged not to tie the date of the deposit with the residence hall selection. There are lots of changes in the college admission world, and there are some schools that will tie the date that the deposit check is received to first choice in housing or some other, preferred parking spot. But for the most part, 99% of the schools that you'll come into contact with have more of a traditional, you have until the deadline, make your decision. Don't be late on May 1, but make sure once you're set to send in the deposit.
Okay, I'll ask for a last few questions on demonstrated interest, on the essay, on public schools in Connecticut, and the value of the liberal arts. We'll try to stay in those topics. We'll kind of open it up after the second round.
I wanted to revisit the value of liberal arts education. Could you have more examples or provide more information on the return on investment for some of the liberal arts programs? It's when you look at the sticker price, which just seems daunting, like you have to sell your firstborn.
I mean,
Who wants it?
Just like,
Happy to.
I'm okay to do it, yeah.
You guys can all answer. I mean, you can
Yeah.
all offer your opinion, sure.
So Georgetown just released an article maybe 2 weeks ago about the return on investment for liberal arts colleges, and some of the private colleges in Connecticut have the top return on investment. So there's a really interesting curve on liberal arts graduates that they may not necessarily be making the absolute top salary from the minute that they graduate, but the amount of money they will make over the course of their career is significantly higher. So if you just Google Georgetown study return on investment liberal arts, it's going to give you a whole list. And many Connecticut colleges are on it.
Gives you the
And it breaks it down by major.
formula and everything of how they calculated the thing, and then you can search for all the different schools, like any school that they can use, which is pretty intense. So.
It puts it by major too, by different groups, sociology, history, English. But I think the thing that we would all say, and I think I'm also a liberal arts guy, I'm a political science major, that the liberal arts, you have to study what you love, because there are going to be students who love engineering and they should go into that and they learn that specific discipline, or a task like accounting where you have the formula involved with that type of profession. But most of the professions, having that ability to think critically and to be able to be an effective communicator and understand data and all of the skills that are really important for the soft skills, really will intersect with management and go into business or go into something with big data. The major for students isn't going to be the end-all part that defines their career, because they're going to change careers 7 different times, and they're going to change jobs multiple times. And so having a degree where they are passionate about that subject matter and they excel in that subject matter, and that the school that they're attending does do things to help provide them with internships or opportunities to have some sort of experiential learning is really important. I think about our liberal arts students at Fairfield. Students in our English program right now are doing this coding project where they're intersecting with Google as English majors to do specific types of coding on some historical artifacts. Like things that when I went to college, that was not even, it was Shakespeare and it was Brit Lit and all sorts of different things. Now they're integrating that curriculum where they're thinking about what that long-term career is going to be.
You guys did? Okay. All right, I'll take one more, so we're gonna roll to the next few topics. One more, here we go.
So what's trending? When you're seeing these 15,000, 13,000 come in, what are you seeing, whether it's liberal arts or not? What are you seeing as the movement right now?
I think it would depend on what majors an individual school offers, but I can say that at CCSU and at my previous institution, some of the most popular majors, and have been for a long time, are psychology and psychological sciences. That's big. Nursing, we've talked about a little bit. Also, criminal justice is really popular. Students watch CSI, and they see all the criminal shows. But in general, business and engineering tend to be evolving. So those are areas where new majors are popping up over time. Data science is something new, right? So we've had business administration for a long time, accounting for a long time, finance for a long time, but data management, data science, those kinds of things are starting to pop up more and more. And certainly with engineering, there are more and more career paths developing, and more, I think, schools are tending toward interdisciplinary studies. So we're really trying to combine disciplines. We're talking about liberal arts and that giving you a broad range of skill sets, but I think schools are trying not only to do that through the liberal arts, but trying to do it with these other areas that are sort of one track. Like accounting sort of goes in one direction, or electrical engineering sort of goes in one direction. But the more interdisciplinary that schools get, the more they're combining majors, they're giving students a skill set that is really broad, because we know the world is so different than it was 15 years ago. And we can't imagine where it's going to be 15 years from now. So trying to make sure that students aren't sort of tailored to just one area, I think is a trend that probably most of our institutions are seeing.
Great. We're going to move on to round 2 of topics. I'm going to start on this side now. My second favorite topic is test optional admission. This is growing. Fairtest.org is the website where you see close to 600 colleges. Is it more than that now? 600 plus colleges that are now test optional. This is a big deal in college admission, and Julie's going to start.
Yeah, sure. So I have a unique position of, first of all, I've only worked at test optional institutions. Before I worked at Trinity, I worked at Sacred Heart right down the road. But also my first year at Trinity was the year that Trinity went test optional. So I got to see all of that stress and anxiety from certainly the applicant pool, but also the faculty of what is this going to look like? What is this going to change on our campus, kind of in live action. So test optional is, what it sounds like is the when colleges remove the requirement for students to submit any standardized test score. So the SAT, the ACT, some of your schools might be asking you to take the SAT too, all of those. The reason why Trinity went test optional, I think, is important to mention here. Our vice president for enrollment did a lot of his doctoral research on non-cognitive, non-traditional predictors of success. It's just a really insidery, jargony way to say there are key personality traits that have been shown to be better predictors of college persistence and college GPA than your standardized test scores. I mean, actually, there was an article, I think, in the Washington Post maybe yesterday or the day before, that yet another study has come back that says high school GPA is a better determiner of your college GPA and your ability to graduate from college than your standardized test score. So it's this research that we see when we as institutions decide to go test optional. For us, what that's meant is it certainly allowed us to change a lot on our campus. Number one, over half of our student body is test optional, which is pretty huge for only being test optional for 4 years. We were also able to increase our enrollment of first generation to college students. So we're at 15% now, which is really exciting for us. But also faculty are coming back and saying that they have students who are much more engaged in the classroom, much more dynamic, and that we have students coming in saying, I was only able to apply to your school because you were test optional. I'm not a good test taker. SATs and ACTs are often an indicator of your level of wealth in the town that you grew up in, or how great the schools are that you're going to, or how much test prep you had. There's all these other factors that go in, but I think it's really important for students to remember the only thing that the ACT and the SAT measure is your ability to do those tests. That's it. It has no reflection on your intelligence, your ability to perform in the classroom, your writing skills, if you will be successful in college. It simply is one test that you take on one day, and that's the measurement of how well you do on that. I think it's really important for students to remember that. When you're applying to colleges, when they say that they're test optional, a really good question to ask is, what is their profile test score? So if their profile or average score is below what you've scored, then you can ask that college and say, hey, would you recommend that if I submit this? If I submit this, will this help my application? Not all colleges will tell you, but you can ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. So that's one thing to think about. But also asking a college, what does test optional mean to them? So for some colleges, even if you submit your test scores, they won't even look at them if they're test optional. They're like, we don't care. For us, it's a little different. If you submit your test scores, we're going to look at them and we're gonna take them into account when we're evaluating your academic capabilities for the college. So we tell students it's your choice whether or not you submit them, but know that we will factor them in. And again, that's a question that you should ask colleges. One thing too that I want to really stress is I hear very frequently from students that, well, I know my SAT scores were below your profile, but they're not that bad. So I figured that I would go ahead and submit them because I didn't want you to think that they were even worse than they were. All the time I hear this. So I'm going back to my earlier statement of I read over 1,000 applications a year. I'm making no assumptions about you. I simply take it out of my evaluation process when I'm reading your application. So have that conversation with your representative at the college where you're applying and get their advice and hear from them how they handle test optional. There are lots and lots of amazing test optional institutions throughout Connecticut, but throughout the country too. So you have lots of options to explore, and just remember that those scores really just measure how well you do on those tests and nothing else.
In our office, we're starting to build a database of when you should submit, when you shouldn't submit by college. So that's something that you'll see more and more down the pike. All of these institutions except Central Connecticut are test optional, but we're seeing public schools now considering test optional and going test optional. Indiana, University of Indiana, and I think North Carolina system is thinking, and of course the big one is California. When California goes test optional, I have a feeling it's just going to be open season. There's going to be a lot more public schools going test optional. So we'll let you guys talk about that after we complete all of your 3 to 5 minutes. We'll go back to Carissa. You had activities, sports, extracurriculars, all that.
Yeah, so I had the value of participation, really. And our research, our internal research and national research too, has shown that students that participate in one or more clubs or activities tend to persist better, they tend to perform better, they tend to experience better success in college, and that's for a number of reasons. I think first and foremost, it gives students an opportunity to connect outside of their major, to connect with an area of interest that maybe they'd explored through high school or something they always wanted to explore. So we have students coming in who might join an a cappella club or might join an esports club. These are interests outside of their major, but it gives them a chance to connect with people that share some of the same interests that they have. I think another reason that students might join a club or activity is because they want to build their resume. Student government association is a great way to do that. You're building your communication skills, your leadership skills. That's something you can certainly put on your resume and something that folks who are offering you an internship or career opportunities would be interested in seeing. Besides student government, there are also activities networks. We have a central activities network that plans big events on campus. That's another opportunity for leadership. Students also join clubs and activities to connect even more deeply with their major. So a student might join, if they're a political science major, they might join a political science club, and that will give them an opportunity maybe to participate in Model UN activities, to travel to conferences. We have a political science club that recently planned a trip to Puerto Rico to attend a political science conference there. That gives them a chance to meet other university students interested in the same things that they're interested in. And for a major like political science, where there isn't a direct career path, you're not going to necessarily become an accountant like you would with an accounting major, it gives you an opportunity to see what other people are considering for career opportunities. I think also if you are interested in fitness and just keeping yourself, wellness and things like that, there's lots of opportunities like intramural sports. If CCSU is a Division I school, many schools are Division II, and in a lot of those places, they're recruiting their athletes. And so there isn't a lot of opportunity for students to participate in athletic competition unless they're participating through intramural sports or clubs. And so that's a great option for students as well. But there are also other things like dance club. It gives students a chance to compete and participate. For all these reasons, this gives students an opportunity to connect with other students. And one of the biggest benefits, I think, when you're in your major, you're a lot of times part of a cohort, and you're spending a lot of time with folks in the same year that you're in. When you're in a residence hall, a lot of schools have residence halls by year, and so you might be spending a lot of time with other freshmen or a lot of time with other sophomores. By participating in a club, an activity, or a sport, you get a chance to spend a lot of time with students of different levels, sophomores, juniors, and seniors when you're a freshman, and that gives you an opportunity to see what life is going to be like in the future, to get some mentoring, to connect with somebody. They can give you advice on what professors that you should take, or just what it's like to be a junior. So I think there are lots of reasons why a student might join a club or activity, but we know that research shows that that helps students persist and it helps students succeed.
Great, thank you. Mike, what was your topic again? I lost my notes.
Campus visit.
Campus visit, oh, really important. As the juniors now, we're asking you to develop your list and then go visit schools from your list, so this is perfect.
So we've touched on this a little bit throughout the night already, and I'll really try to be as straightforward with this as I possibly can. The campus visit is critically important for all of you as much as it is for all of us. Our biggest job or our biggest role is being able to find fit, right, and predict success. And getting to know you and learning about you is part of that, right? But you also need to get to know us, and there's no better way of doing that than visiting campus and having the opportunity to see the place, to see the facilities, to get a sense of the atmosphere, to meet the students, to meet faculty, to make a connection with an admission counselor on campus, maybe even that person that's going to recruit at your high school and probably be the one to read your application. So you want to visit campus. Timing of a campus visit, and my recommendation is always to consider at some point during your junior year or the summer leading up, if that's possible for you. We start to see a transition with the spring break is when we start to see more juniors starting to visit as opposed to seniors, and then the summer we get flooded with rising seniors. The campus visit, and this was said to me when I went for my first campus visit as an applicant, was you'll get that gut feeling. You'll feel it deep within your soul whether or not that's the right fit. And I can say I went to Iona and I knew it from that very moment. I remember driving home and saying, if I get admitted, that's where I'm going to go, and that's ultimately what happened. So you'll experience all of that. The types of visits that you can take are a general information session and tour. Most colleges will do them on a daily basis, twice a day, and then select Saturdays or Sundays throughout the year. Your fall open house, I always kind of compare that to a big dog and pony show in the sense of everybody from campus comes out. Anybody, whether you're a freshman in high school, senior in high school, is welcome to come, but you're going to get a chance there on a very large scale perspective to meet faculty, to see students, to ask questions directly into a program, so you should consider those in the fall. Shadow Day program, some schools will open those up to applicants, some schools wait until you're admitted, but that's a chance for you to spend a half a day or 3/4 of a day with another student from that school, going to two classes with them, having lunch in the dining hall, maybe going to some sort of extracurricular, and it's a fairly genuine and authentic look at that institution. Admitted Student Day or Accepted Student Day, all of us, I would assume, host something like that throughout the spring. Much like open house, but I'd say the biggest thing is the conversation is different from our perspective and from your perspective. you're now you're not shopping anymore, you're more in the sense of looking to buy. So it does take on a different atmosphere, and it's, you can have a little bit more of a tailored approach because you may have been admitted into a particular program, you know what your financial aid package looks like. At that point in time, you're more familiar with the place, so you're able to ask maybe the right question or know who the right person is to go to. Just a couple of, an interview, okay? An interview, we've said this already tonight, but that's a great way to get to know the campus. When we conduct an interview, it's a two-way street. It's not a mugging. We're not grilling you in terms of, wanting to know exactly what happened on that transcript. We're gonna ask that question, okay? But we wanna get to know you as a person. More likely than not, the counselor that's going to interview you is probably gonna be the person that's gonna do that initial read on your application. So it's great for you to put yourself in front of that person and put on a good show, put on a good performance. Do not come in jeans, do not come in sweatshirt, do not come in with a baseball cap backwards. You don't have to wear a full suit, but look, professional. Look well, represent yourself well. This is a true story. I had a student that was deferred. This is my first year on the job, and he showed up in ripped jeans and a hat backwards and a hoodie, and the interview was as quick as I could possibly make it without being insulting, and he wasn't admitted because I felt he didn't come prepared for that or with the same amount of respect for the situation that he was putting himself into. So, I think I said this, but what you should get out of the visit is make sure you interact with students, okay? Not just our ambassadors, okay? Secret is out, they're trained, we pay them, they know what they're supposed to say, right? But they're also gonna give you a good sense of the place when they're taking you around campus. But if on that tour, or when you're walking from your car to the admissions office, if you see a student, stop them. They're gonna be able to really genuinely answer your questions. Make sure you let us know in advance that you're coming. Goes back to Corey's discussion on demonstrated interest. And my last thing, taste the food. Dining hall food's come a long way since I was in college, but you wanna make sure that, you're gonna be able to survive on something other than mom's cooking.
Thanks, Mike. Last topic, and then we'll open up to questions, is Corey's. It's about admission, financial aid and merit scholarships.
All right, 3 to 5 minutes and you'll be experts in all of financial aid, all right? So there's a lot of different types of aid, and I'll just speak to a few different things and give you some tips. But when it comes down to that selection, as Mike talked about, it's fit socially, it's fit academically, and of course it's fit financially. And a lot of the hard conversations that we have with students and with parents is it gets down to the wire, and they just weren't expecting that the school was going to cost that much. And having those conversations with students and families in April of their senior year, that are the last 2 weeks, you would be shocked at the number of phone calls between April 15th and May 1 of, this is where my son or daughter wants to be, but we just can't make it work without another $10,000, $15,000. Those are the hard conversations to have. So these are the times to start to think about realistically, as parents, what is our budget for school? Don't just take your budget and then look at the sticker price of the school, because for the most part, most schools are discounting that tuition or those fees. There's some sort of savings, especially at private schools. And so you may see a sticker at Fairfield of $67,000 next year, but most of our students, 90%, are receiving something either a need-based or merit-based scholarship. And so start to think about what it is your family is comfortable with. From a financial aid standpoint, we look at merit scholarships, and every school does it a little bit differently, but merit typically is awarded at the time that the student is admitted, and it's really based upon the academic achievements of that student. And sometimes it's leadership with extracurriculars, but really, for the most part, merit is based upon a combination of their rank in class, their strength of their schedule, their overall GPA, and for schools that use SAT or ACTs. And typically schools are pretty transparent with those scholarship amounts, and you can go onto their website and get an understanding of what the dollar amounts are and typically what their ranges are. As one of my colleagues said, you said about the net price calculator, which is a tool on every school's website. You can put in your grades and your SAT, ACT information, and they'll typically give you a good understanding of what that merit offer and sometimes that need offer, what that will look like. So merit is typically based upon students' ability and typically not tied to your financial circumstances. There are some schools that do tie merit to your overall income, but for the most part, we're going to look at it just based upon the student's academic ability. Then there is athletic scholarships, and those are at Division I institutions and Division II institutions. Those are the hardest to get, hardest to predict, and typically it's a 10-to-1 ratio of every $10 that's spent at a school on merit, it's about $1 on athletics. So focus more on the academic pursuits rather than the athletic, unless you really are a special talented student on the basketball court or volleyball court. At that point, usually by sophomore, junior year, if you're going to get significant money, that those coaches have already made that outreach to you. So merit, athletic, and then there's need-based. Need-based usually is assessed by the financial aid office, and it's based upon a review of different data that you're going to give to us. Every school is going to require the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, and a lot of private schools will also require, and some publics will require a supplemental form called the CSS profile. And basically what's going to happen, you'll fill out that information, and pretty quickly you're going to find what is called your estimated family contribution. And that's the number. On the FAFSA, it's going to be pretty universal. On the CSS profile, it may vary a little bit from school to school, as some schools allow for different expenses that other schools don't. So I'll give you an example. At Fairfield, if you're paying for a student at a Catholic or private school that's still in high school, we take that into consideration on your overall estimate. Some schools may not, so it's just a balancing act. But your FAFSA should be pretty universal, your estimated family contribution. Your CSS profile, usually that number is going to be a little bit higher than the overall FAFSA, and that's what schools are going to use in order to determine your need. So I was not a math major, so we'll use really simple numbers. So let's say the total cost is $60,000. Let's say your estimated family contribution is $20,000. Now you're left with $40,000 worth of need, and that's where the financial aid office will try to assist with different grants, different federal entitlement programs, maybe some state money, in order to try to help meet that need. Some schools are going to meet your full demonstrated need. Some schools are going to meet a percentage of your need, and some schools will meet as much as they can as their budgets allow. Every school is vastly different, but start to play around with the net price calculators. Start to have conversations with amongst the family of what realistically do we want to make in terms of this investment, because so many students, I put myself back in my shoes as a high school senior, I really had no idea what we could afford. These were conversations that we just did not have. And I was one of those students who, I was first gen, I was Pell eligible, came down to the wire for me in terms of where I was going to make that decision. Those are, having the mindset that I have now, I would have wanted to approach that differently. And so I want to share that experience with you to start really thinking about what those expectations are going to be, and to get a realistic understanding. The hardest part about this college admission and financial aid process is that the financial aid usually is the last thing to come. And so you have an offer of admission. Think about our early action students. They've known for a month and a half, but now the financial aid doesn't get there till February. Now it's, we have to take a lot more time to really weigh these different financial options and make an informed decision. And so we don't usually know the cost until after the student's been admitted. We can try to estimate it for you, work with each school, research, and apply for outside scholarships at the same time that you're applying for need-based and merit with your schools. You're experts now.
That was great. 3 to 5 minutes of financial aid. That was awesome. Okay, so right now, I'll just ask if you guys want to add any more to your other colleagues' topics.
I'll just add on the financial aid conversation, and I think Corey touched on this when he referenced, or actually both of you, when you referenced the net price calculator. That's a really good way to know early. So you might not get your official financial aid award until February, but seek out those net price calculators on the school's websites, because that will give you a good indicator of what that financial aid award is going to look like around the corner in February. And you can start filling out your FAFSA in October now. It used to be that you couldn't, if you have children who went to college a couple of years ago, you might think you have to wait until after January to start filling that out, but it's changed in the last couple of years. Now you can fill out your FAFSA in October. And for schools that award financial aid packages on a rolling basis, like CCSU, you can get your financial aid package as early as the end of November and have a really good sense of what your ultimate cost is going to be pretty early. So depending on when those financial aid packages come out, you could know early, so the earlier you act, the better. And one more plug for acting early, schools award aid. A lot of schools, so Pell Grants you're entitled to a Pell Grant. If you qualify for it, you're gonna get it no matter when you apply for financial aid. But certain other awards, the school will get a certain amount of money, that's what they have to award for the year, and they're gonna award it as time goes on. The later you apply, the less opportunity you have to get some of those other awards. So you might always qualify for a Pell Grant, but some of the other things might have run out. So lots of reasons to act early on financial aid.
Well, that was fantastic. Someone who's done this for 30 years, I learned a lot tonight from our experts on the panel. So let's give them a round of applause quickly. Great. I want to thank them for coming to St. Joe's tonight. It's awesome. All right, so we'll do questions on all topics. How's that? Way back, Jack.
I have two questions. One, if someone could speak about, because I've been reading studies about the extracurricular thing, that colleges are looking more at people or students doing something passionately versus doing something or doing a lot of things just to fill up their resume. So if anybody can speak about that, that would be great. And then my second question is, and I won't name the school, I had a senior who wanted to do test optional at a school in DC, but she mistakenly hit the Common App button that she was going to send her SAT scores, and they emailed her and said, your application is incomplete, and we have to have your SAT scores to give you a decision. And she wanted to go test optional. And I know, I think 3 of you guys are test optional. What is your policy on that?
I mean, I can start on the test optional thing. So for us, we call students OOTs if they accidentally submit scores. It's called opt-out testing, OOT. So if you want to OOT, you just have to email any member of our staff and say, please disregard my SAT or ACT scores, and we simply remove them from their application. And I imagine most test optional institutions would be able to do that for you as well. I don't know what school in DC, but we're not going to talk about it. And then your other question was?
Doing something passionately.
Yeah.
Versus
So for us, we have a lot of weird words apparently. We call students like that pointy, so it's like the opposite of well-rounded, is that they're very pointy in one direction, and that's okay. For us, it's important for us to build a well-rounded class. It's important for students to do what they're passionate about and do things they actually like. It goes back to that thing about your application needs to be authentic and be a true representation of who you are.
You guys want to add?
Yeah, I think when reading an application, for us, it's at Assumption, and this goes actually for all the schools that I've worked at, we very much have sold a community aspect. My guess is that that's part of what you've experienced here at St. Joe's, is it's not just the educational component and the college prep, but also the community, whether it's at a sporting event or a show or some sort of service opportunity. But our goal is to not just bring in students that are going to be educationally or successful within the classroom, but that are going to give back to the community that as a college we're striving to create. So we don't want students that are just going to sit in their residence halls and study and play video games, but rather that are going to study and spend some time doing that, but are also going to be involved in the different clubs and activities around campus, and seeing students that are doing different activities in high school and doing them well, and not just looking to build a resume, but are doing maybe one to three things consistently over the course of their 4 years. That's going to be important to us, and could make the difference in a sense for a borderline student.
Questions? Over here.
I have a question. I don't know if this is a trend or not, but this kind of goes to campus visits and maybe a little bit of administrative interest. But I have a friend of a friend whose two of her daughters they're not athletes, but they've gone on campus visits where the school has flown them in and had them visit the campus. And I'm like, is that a trend? Because you don't typically hear that unless a student is an athlete.
One of the things that I wrote down that I neglected to say was that part of the campus visit process, and it's going to change from school to school, is our own creativity in the ways in which we try to engage you and bring you to campus. I've seen schools do that, whether it's fly them in or provide a bus, and in my experience, it's been after students been admitted, not necessarily during the application phase. But I mean, that was going back probably 8 to 10 years ago that we were doing that. So it's not uncommon, but I think part of it too, and this is in a sense changing, is that it's not enough for us to just have you come take an information session and tour. The world is changing so quickly, and it's not anything here, but there's so much for our schools to show off and tell you about us, that we need to be creative in the ways in which we invite you to campus, in the ways in which we introduce you to students, introduce you to faculty, introduce you to programs.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, just add
So we do a prospective student fly-in every fall, and then we also do admitted student fly-ins in the spring. And so it's really easy. There are lots of online resources. If you just type in fly-in programs, it'll give you a list and all the parameters. So ours and most colleges are going to be application based, and they're going to be pretty competitive because we're paying to fly you to campus. But it's with the hope that you will love it and you'll apply and you'll come. But if you just Google fly-ins, and it'll give you a full list.
Who's next? Right in the middle.
Hi. I hear often about demonstrated leadership, history of leadership, and yet it seems like perhaps not all students have a natural aptitude or desire to be in leadership roles. So on the admission side, what sort of a lens do you view that through?
Not every student's going to be the president of a club or the captain of the sports team, and that's okay. I think it comes down to character, and it's where those teacher recommendations and the school counselor recommendation will play a big role in how we perceive who that student is. It's okay to be a quiet student. I think about my wife, who thankfully she's not here, so she can't hear this, but she's very quiet, and she's always been, more reserved. It's the reason she's an elementary school teacher. She's very calm and reserved, and she wasn't a student that was pictured on every single page of the yearbook, but she had great leadership characteristics, or great character representation, and people got to know her in that realm. And so it's okay not to be the captain of 3 different sports, and it's okay not to be the chair of the Model UN, as long as the character aspect really shines through the act.
I will say over the years, I've been very impressed with the way admissions officers have been reviewing applications. They really are very into it, passionate, really looking for the really great things about each applicant. And I think that's only a benefit for us because we know we have a lot of great kids here at St. Joe's. Question? Way in the back.
On financial aid, are the merit scholarships and need-based aid independent of one another, or do they somehow one affect the other?
affect each other. So the merit that you receive will affect the overall amount of demonstrated need you have. So my example of $60,000 tuition, your EFC is $20,000, and now you have a $10,000 scholarship, your need is now $30,000. So usually schools award merit first, need-based second.
Yes.
Is it typical for a test optional school to still require standardized tests to make a merit scholarship determination?
I don't think so, because I think I think people go test optional because they feel like maybe it's not the best predictor of the student's ability, and then to ask for it later. I haven't experienced that, but I think that's a really good question to ask schools that you're visiting if they count that in merit.
There are some schools that will have that requirement. They're fewer and far between. What's seeming to be more common is there are a lot of test optional schools when you are admitted on test optional and then you enroll, that if you have taken an SAT or ACT, that their IR or their institutional research office may ask for those scores just to further prove their, we look at correlations between the inputs in the student retention or student success and their graduation rate. So sometimes schools may require it after the student has decided to enroll, and that's really just for research purposes.
We have time for two more. I'm just committed to respecting their time. We have time for two more questions. Right in front.
If you go to early decision, you're going to commit, when do you hear about financial aid or merit scholarship offers?
It depends on this. It really is one of those that depends for us. If you're early decision, we notify you before Christmas, and then we give your financial aid around the 3rd of January, and then you have until January 15th to make the decision. We usually try to give about a 2-week window between when all those forms are due and how much time you have to weigh that option.
Right here.
Just wanted to ask how important it is for a student that really wants to go to take a school or college to get in from the beginning. If they couldn't financially get there, and maybe choose to go to a more affordable college and then later on transfer to the school of their choice. Is that, is that something that would be acceptable or preference? Does the college have a preference for a student to start from the beginning than to accept the transfer?
I'm going to jump in on that one, and then I imagine it may be different at all of us, but at a lot of private schools, especially schools that have secondary accreditors like AACSB for business, ABET for engineering, we have a real tough time of being able to accept a full 60 credits of transfer activity. We don't have a common core curriculum that's universal in college admission. In fact, folks from her school, my school, and some other private schools in Connecticut have been meeting over the last month or two to kind of think about, is there an opportunity for a common liberal arts experience that could be shared between community colleges and all schools within Connecticut. And that's still, we're light years away from that happening, but for a school like Fairfield, we will do everything possible for transfer students to make it and to be able to take all of their credits. However, for some programs like business, we can't accept almost any business course unless it's from another AACSB accredited school, or nursing, you can't take any nursing credits to transfer in. So it's a complex situation that each school is going to be doing differently. I'm assuming it may be a little bit different in the state system.
Sure. Yeah, I come from a private, and now I work at a state institution, so I have, I think, both perspectives. I will say that there have been plenty of times that we have referred a student to a less expensive college when we found that they couldn't make it work where we were. But one thing to be careful of is that sometimes where you think you might be saving money by getting some courses out of the way before you transfer in, you might actually be creating problems for yourself by losing time and money with taking courses that won't transfer. And so it might seem like a good idea up front. We run into that a lot. We have students who might attend community college for a year or two thinking, I'll get some of my basic core curriculum out of the way, and then I'll transfer. And then they find that maybe a full semester worth of courses don't transfer in. Now they've lost a full semester and whatever money they paid for those courses, and they have to start all over. So like Corey was saying, core curriculum might be different from school to school, but within a school, core curriculum might be different from major to major as well. So if that's something that you would like to do, if it's something you plan on doing, I would recommend that you reach out to the admissions office of the school that you intend to transfer to try and get some guidance and advice on what courses you might take that you know would transfer into the program that you're looking for, because we really do see a lot of students that lose credits. And I'll say that the second problem that we run into sometimes, and this isn't as often, is that students will take too many courses or spend too much time at another institution, and they might run out of financial aid eligibility. So they spend a lot of their financial aid eligibility at one institution planning to get their degree at another, and by the time they transfer, they don't have much of their financial aid eligibility left. So you might want to be careful about those two things. It might seem like a good idea, but I'd say connect with the admissions office or the transfer office if it's something different, and get some advice on what courses you should take.
Could I send that segue? What about if my son was interested in WestCon?
Yeah.
And he wanted to then transfer to Central?
Yeah.
I mean, would there be a transition there on credits, or would, in the state, you know?
Even
Yeah.
among the state schools, core
Right.
curriculum is different.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, if you know you're gonna transfer a little ahead of time, we have an office of transfer and academic articulations, and the person who runs that office would be happy to meet with anyone 2-3 years out before they transfer, just to give them some advice on what they should take, because we really don't want students to lose any credits when they make that transition.
Thank you. Well, this was great. You know, to have this expertise on stage in one night is really incredible for us as a community. So we're really happy that you guys were able to come and do this for us tonight. So I just want to wrap things up by saying, juniors, if you haven't talked to your counselor yet about your college process, please do. Sophomores, thanks for coming. And good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. No, you guys. At least we can do. Yeah, you guys speak so great.
Yes.